10 years ago, I was a bright-eyed tour guide with aspirations of traveling the world. My name is Tiffany. Everything changed the moment I met Jack. Jack had me completely enthralled with his charm and success. We got married right away, and I felt like I had it all. Then the offer of the job that would make all the difference came. One evening during dinner, Jack announced, "Tiff, I've been offered a position with an amazing law firm." "That's fantastic, my love." "Where?" I inquired. "We'd have to move. It's in another city." My heart fell. Though I enjoyed my work, my true passion was Jack. "What about my job?" Jack became stern-faced. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance, Tiff, so hurry up. Anywhere can provide employment for you." His eagerness was contagious, so I hesitated. "You're right, we can work it out." In a new city, we moved into a large house. It was exciting at first, but as the boxes were opened, I saw a whole new Jack that I had never seen before. He angrily declared one day, surveying our partially unpacked living room, "The house is a mess." I pointed at the boxes and said, "I'm working on it." "I can't live like this. Work faster." Though surprised, I dismissed it. I reminded myself that he was stressed up about his new work. I had trouble finding employment for several weeks. One evening, I thought, maybe I should look for a tour guide position here. Jack chuckled. "Don't act absurd. You should pay attention to the house. It's still lacking in quality." "But Jack, I want to go to work." I longed for it. He was taller than me when he got up. "Tiffany, I'm the one working. Your job is here, making sure everything is great for me. You get it?" I nodded while stifling my emotions. I was determined to make it work, even if he wasn't the man I married. I had no idea that this was the start of a nightmare that would continue for years. Days became weeks, and weeks became months, until I was stuck in a rut of never-ending chores and tiptoeing around. Jack's temper shortened, and his demands became increasingly irrational. I once proposed employing a housekeeper to assist with the workload. Jack's expression flushed. "Are you joking with me? Do you wish to spend my hard-earned money on things that you need to be doing instead?" "Tiffany, this is your task. Maybe you're not suited to be my wife if you can't take it." I swallowed my pride, even though his comments hurt. "You're accurate. I apologize. I'll put forth more effort." And I gave it my best effort. In an attempt to win back the man I fell in love with, I put myself into being the ideal housewife. But Jack expected more the more I accomplished. Our relationship fell apart as his career took off. He rose to prominence as a lawyer, and I stood by and did nothing, becoming a house ghost in the process. I mastered social media management throughout the years, managing Jack's accounts in the background. Ironically, I was living a lie while creating the impression of a prosperous, happy couple. One evening, Jack barged in and slammed the door as I was making dinner. "Had a rough day?" I inquired, attempting to maintain composure. He angrily said, "Shut up and get my food ready." I finished plating the supper that had taken me hours to prepare. Jack gulped it down and spat it out. "This is repulsive. Can you not perform anything correctly?" He swept the plate off the table, breaking it on the floor and sending food flying everywhere before I could reply. I knelt to pick up the broken pieces, and he roared over me, telling me to clean it up. My eyes ached with tears, but I dared not open them. This was now the new normal for us. Resolved to perform better, I spent hours preparing Jack's favorite food the following day. I was horrified to discover that I had forgotten the bread while I was arranging the table. Jack entered while undoing his necktie. "Where's my food?" "I'll be right over to serve the soup," I hurriedly said. He took a seat, glanced at the table, and lost control. "Where is the bread being kept?" Are you truly this incapable? He moved quickly enough to knock the bowl off the table. My leg was splattered with hot soup, and I let out a painful cry. Jack mumbled, "God, you're so stupid," and left me in the muck and on my scorching skin. As I cleaned, sobbing quietly, a thought hit me like a thunderbolt. How did I let it get this bad? When did I become the shell of a person? The next morning, I woke up with a resolve I hadn't felt in years. I couldn't live like this anymore. "Jack," I said as he was about to leave for work, "I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce." He turned slowly, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "A divorce? You?" He laughed, a sound that sent chills down my spine. "Listen carefully, Tiffany. If you leave me, I'll destroy you. You'll have nothing, no money, no reputation, nothing. You'll end up on the streets with the other worthless people." My breath caught in my throat. I'd seen the homeless in our city, their desperate faces haunting me. Could that really be my fate? "Face it," Jack continued, "you're nothing without me. Remember that." As he left, slamming the door behind him, I sank to the floor. He was right. I had no money of my own, no career, nothing. But I also knew I couldn't keep living like this. That day marked a turning point. I might not have had the courage to leave yet, but I started planning. I began secretly recording our interactions, saving abusive texts, and documenting everything. If I was going to escape, I needed proof. As I continued to document Jack's abuse, his career reached new heights. He won a high-profile case and decided to celebrate at home with colleagues and friends. "You'll prepare everything," he ordered, "and don't even think about ordering in." I wanted all homemade. For days, I worked tirelessly. I cleaned every inch of our house, prepared an array of dishes, and made sure everything was perfect. The night of the party arrived, and I was exhausted but ready. Jack came home early, carrying a bottle of wine. "Here," he said, pouring me a glass. "You look like you could use this." I was surprised by his gesture, but accepted gratefully. The wine tasted odd, but I chopped it up to my fatigue. Jack barely touched his glass. "Go change," he said. "Guess we'll be here soon." I headed upstairs, suddenly feeling dizzy. By the time I reached our bedroom, the room was spinning. I collapsed onto the bed, consciousness fading fast. When I woke, sunlight was streaming through the windows. Confused and groggy, I made my way downstairs. Jack's mother, Margaret, was in the kitchen, her face contorted with disgust when she saw me. "Well, look who finally decided to grace us with her presence," she sneered. "You should be ashamed of yourself." "What? What happened?" I asked, my head pounding. "What happened?" "You got drunk and embarrassed my son in front of all his colleagues. That's what happened." Margaret's voice rose with each word. "He had to call me to help entertain because his wife was passed out drunk upstairs." I felt sick. No, that's not possible. I only had one glass of wine. "Oh, save it," Margaret cut me off. "I always knew you weren't good enough for my Jack. Now everyone knows what a mess you are." As Margaret continued her tirade, fragments of memory surfaced. The strange taste of the wine, Jack barely drinking his, the sudden onset of dizziness. "He drugged me," I whispered to myself, the realization hitting me like a truck. After Margaret left, I sat at the kitchen table, my mind racing. Jack was systematically destroying my reputation. If I tried to leave now, who would believe me? That day, I stepped up my efforts. I bought a new phone and hid it carefully. I started recording everything, Jack's drunken rants, his 3 o'clock a.m. cleaning demands, every insult and threat. One incident I recorded stood out painfully in my memory. It was my birthday, and I had hoped Jack might remember, might show a glimmer of the man I once loved. I prepared a special dinner, holding on to a foolish hope for a peaceful evening. Jack stumbled in late, reeking of alcohol. I hit record on my hidden phone as he entered the kitchen. "What's all this?" he slurred, eyeing the carefully set table. It's my birthday, Jack." "I made dinner," I said softly. He laughed, a cruel, harsh sound. "Your birthday. Who cares? Look at you. You fat cow. You don't deserve a celebration." I felt each word like a physical blow, but kept the camera rolling as he continued his tirade. "And this?" He gestured at the food. "This is slop. You call yourself a wife, can't even cook a decent meal." He swept the plates off the table, food splattering across the floor I'd scrubbed meticulously earlier. I flinched but didn't move, letting the camera capture every moment of his drunken cruelty. Another night, the recording caught an even more bizarre incident. It was 3:00 a.m. when Jack shook me awake roughly. "Get up," he hissed, pulling me out of bed. "What's wrong?" I asked, disoriented and frightened. "I found dust. The house is filthy. Clean it, all of it, now." For hours, I scrubbed every surface of our home, Jack following behind, inspecting my work with a critical eye. All the while, my phone recorded from its hidden spot, capturing his relentless demands and my exhausted compliance. These recordings became my secret weapons, concrete evidence of the abuse I endured. Each file was carefully saved and backed up, a digital archive of my suffering and, ultimately, my path to freedom. Meanwhile, I heard the whispers when we were out, saw the looks of contempt from Jack's friends, but I kept smiling, playing the role of the perfect wife while secretly fighting for my freedom. Our wedding anniversary was approaching. Despite everything, a small part of me hoped things might improve, but I should have known better. The night of our anniversary, Jack came home in high spirits. "I booked us a table at the best restaurant in town," he announced. "Let's celebrate." I was wary but agreed. Before we left, Jack handed me a glass of lemonade. "I made it myself," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Alarm bells rang in my head. I pretended to drink, but when Jack stepped out to make a call, I quickly poured it into a nearby plant. As we drove to the restaurant, I felt myself getting drowsy. I fought to stay awake, but my eyes were so heavy. The next thing I knew, I was being roughly pulled from the car. Through half-closed eyes, I saw Jack sneering down at me. "This is where you belong," he spat, throwing my purse far into the darkness, "with the other worthless people." I heard the car door slam, tires screeching as Jack sped away. My heart raced as I took in my surroundings. Trash littered the streets, and shadowy figures lurked in the darkness. The sound of distant gunshots made me flinch. I was alone, dressed up and wearing jewelry, in the most dangerous part of town. Jack's plan was clear. He hoped I'd fall victim to the criminals who called this area home. Panic threatened to overwhelm me, but I forced myself to think. I spotted a small convenience store, its flickering neon sign a beacon of hope in this desolate place. I ran towards it, my heels clacking on the cracked pavement. Bursting through the door, I startled the woman behind the counter. "Please," I gasped, "I need help." "Can I use your phone?" The woman, her name tag read Rosa, looked at me with a mix of concern and suspicion. "What happened to you, honey?" In a rush, I explained my situation. Rosa's eyes widened, and without a word, she locked the store's front door. "Can't have any troublemakers coming in," she explained, handing me her cell phone. "Make your call, sweetie. You're safe here." With shaking hands, I dialed my friend Sarah's number, silently thanking my good memory. Sarah answered on the third ring. "Sarah, it's Tiffany. I need help," I said, my voice breaking. "Tiff, what's wrong? Where are you?" I gave her the store's address, and she gasped. That's the worst neighborhood in the city. What are you doing there? Jack left me here. Please, can you come get me? I'm on my way. Don't move. As I waited, Rosa kept me company. Her kindness was a stark contrast to the cruelty I'd become accustomed to. Thank you, I said as Sarah's car pulled up outside. You may have saved my life tonight. I slipped off the expensive ring Jack had given me years ago. Here, please take this. It's not much, but... Rosa shook her head. Keep it, honey. Use it to start your new life. Tears in my eyes, I hugged her before rushing out to Sarah's car. As we drove away, Sarah turned to me. Tiff, this has to stop. You need to fight back. How? I asked, feeling defeated. He has all the power, all the connections. Not all of them, Sarah said firmly. I have a friend who works in television. It's time to tell your story. The next few days were a whirlwind. Sarah's friend, a producer named Lisa, arranged for me to appear on a popular talk show. The lights were blinding as I walked onto the set. The host, a kind-faced woman named Angela, greeted me warmly. Tiffany, thank you for being here, she said. Can you tell us your story? Taking a deep breath, I began to speak. I told them everything. The years of emotional abuse, the manipulation, the incident in the bad neighborhood. As I spoke, I saw the shock and sympathy on the audience's faces. Why are you coming forward now? Angela asked. Because I can't be silent anymore, I replied, my voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. There are so many women out there suffering in silence, thinking they're alone. I want them to know they're not. As the show ended, my phone exploded with notifications. My story had struck a chord, and people were rallying behind me. But amidst the supportive messages, one text made my blood run cold. It was from Jack. You'll regret this, you lying scum. I'll destroy you. I showed the message to Sarah, my hands shaking. Don't worry, she said, a determined glint in her eye. He just made his biggest mistake. We've got him now. As we left the studio, I realized this was just the beginning. The real battle was about to start, and for the first time in years, I felt ready to fight. The days following my TV appearance were a blur of activity. My phone rang constantly with calls from journalists, lawyers, and women's rights advocates. Jack's threats continued, but each one only strengthened my resolve. One morning, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. Is this Tiffany? A woman's voice asked. When I answered, yes, who's this? My name is Amanda Reeves. I'm a lawyer, and I'd like to help you with your case. I hesitated. I appreciate the offer, but I can't afford a lawyer. You misunderstand, Amanda said. My firm wants to take your case pro bono. We've been looking for a way to take down Jack Peterson for years. Your story could be the key. It turned out that Jack had made many enemies over the years. Amanda's firm represented several clients who had lost cases to him, some under suspicious circumstances. They saw my case as an opportunity to not only help me, but to expose Jack's unethical practices. I met with Amanda and her team the next day. As I shared my evidence, the recordings, the text messages, everything, their eyes widened. This is gold, Amanda said, reviewing the files. With this, we can not only win your divorce case, but potentially get Jack disbarred. The divorce proceedings began, and Jack came out swinging. He painted a picture of me as an alcoholic, an unfaithful wife who was trying to ruin his reputation out of spite. Your Honor, Jack's lawyer argued, Mrs. Peterson has a history of erratic behavior and substance abuse. These allegations are nothing more than the desperate actions of a woman trying to extort money from her hardworking husband. I watched as Jack's mother, Margaret, took the stand, tearfully recounting instances of my supposed drunken behavior, including the night of Jack's work party. She was a disgrace, Margaret sobbed. My poor son has suffered so much because of her. I felt sick listening to their lies, but Amanda squeezed my hand reassuringly. Don't worry, she whispered. We're just getting started. When it was our turn to present evidence, Amanda was ruthless. She played the recordings of Jack's abuse, showed the threatening text messages, and presented a timeline of his escalating behavior. And now, Amanda said, I'd like to call Sarah Thompson to the stand. Sarah recounted the night she picked me up from the dangerous neighborhood. Her testimony corroborated my story. Objection, Jack's lawyer shouted. This is hearsay. Overruled, the judge said. Continue, Miss Thompson. Next, Amanda called Rosa, the convenience store clerk, to testify. Rosa described my state when I entered her store that night and how she had to lock the door for my safety. Jack's face grew redder with each testimony. I could see him seething, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. The final blow came when Amanda presented a toxicology report. Your Honor, we had Mrs. Peterson's hair tested for long-term drug exposure. The results showed traces of sedatives consistent with her account of being drugged by Mr. Peterson. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Jack leaped to his feet, shouting, She's lying. You can't believe this. Mr. Peterson, control yourself or I'll hold you in contempt, the judge warned. As the evidence mounted, I saw the change in people's faces. The doubt was replaced by shock and sympathy. Even some of Jack's friends in the gallery looked disgusted. The judge called a recess to review all the evidence. As we filed out of the courtroom, I caught Jack's eye. For the first time, I saw fear there. The courtroom was packed as we reconvened for the judge's decision. The tension was palpable, and I could feel Jack's glare burning into the back of my head. Judge Harris cleared his throat. After careful consideration of all evidence presented, this court finds in favor of Mrs. Tiffany Peterson. A collective gasp filled the room. I sat there stunned as the judge continued. Mr. Jack Peterson is hereby ordered to pay alimony, surrender 50% of all joint property, and provide financial compensation for emotional damages. Furthermore, Mr. Peterson will cover all legal costs associated with this case. Jack exploded. This is outrageous. I'll appeal. You can't do this to me. Mr. Peterson, the judge's voice boomed. I suggest you control yourself. Given the evidence presented, you should consider yourself lucky that criminal charges haven't been filed. Jack was forcibly calmed by his lawyer. The judge turned to me. Mrs. Peterson, this court is imposing a restraining order against Mr. Peterson. He is not to approach you or contact you through any means. Do you understand? I nodded, tears of relief streaming down my face. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I moved out of the house I had once considered a prison into a small but cozy apartment. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. But Jack wasn't done. Despite the restraining order, he found ways to make his presence felt. Mutual acquaintances would relay his threats, and I'd occasionally spot his car driving by my new place. We need to do something, Sarah said one evening as we were having coffee. He's not going to stop. I nodded. You're right, and I think I know how to end this once and for all. I still had access to Jack's social media accounts. He'd been too arrogant to change the passwords, probably assuming I wouldn't dare touch them. It was time to use that against him. Over the next few days, I meticulously documented our entire divorce process on his accounts. I shared court transcripts, audio clips, and my own story. The response was overwhelming. Jack's carefully crafted public image crumbled overnight. His firm, unwilling to be associated with the scandal, asked for his resignation. Clients dropped him in droves. When Jack realized what was happening, he went ballistic. He showed up at my apartment, pounding on the door. "You scum," he screamed. "I'll kill you for this." I called the police, and they arrived quickly. Jack was arrested for violating the restraining order. His threats caught on my phone's voice recorder. As they led him away, I saw the man I had once loved, now a shell of himself, broken by his own cruelty and arrogance. In the following months, I heard through the grapevine that Jack had moved to another state, trying to rebuild his career. But his reputation followed him, and he struggled to find work. As for me, I was rebuilding too, but in a much different way. The publicity from the case led to an unexpected opportunity. A local charity that helped women escape abusive relationships reached out to me. "We'd like you to come work with us," the director said. "Your experience could help so many women." I accepted without hesitation. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a purpose. I was using my pain to help others, and in doing so, I was healing myself. 1 year after the trial, I stood in front of a room full of women, all survivors like me. As I shared my story, I saw hope rekindling in their eyes. "Remember," I told them, "you are stronger than you know. Your story matters, and you are not alone." As I looked out at their faces, I realized that this moment, this purpose, was what I had been fighting for all along. Not just my freedom, but the chance to help others find theirs. As months passed, my work at the charity became more than just a job. It became my calling. I found myself connecting with women from all walks of life, each with their own harrowing stories of abuse and survival. One day, a young woman named Emily came to our center. Her story was painfully familiar. A controlling husband, isolation from friends and family, and a deep-seated fear of leaving. Over the next few weeks, I worked closely with Emily, helping her create a safety plan and build up her confidence. When she finally left her husband, the look of relief on her face was all too familiar. "Thank you," she whispered, hugging me tightly. "You saved my life." Her words hit me hard. In helping her, I realized I was also continuing to heal myself. As our center's reputation grew, we started receiving invitations to speak at conferences and events. At first, the idea terrified me. Public speaking had never been my forte, and the thought of sharing my story with large audiences made my palms sweat. But Sarah, ever my rock, encouraged me. "Tiff, your story could help so many people. You've got to do this." My first speaking engagement was at a local university. As I stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, I felt a surge of strength I didn't know I possessed. "My name is Tiffany," I began, "and this is my story of survival." As I spoke, I saw the impact my words were having. Students leaned forward in their seats, some wiping away tears, others nodding in understanding, or clenching their fists in anger at what I'd endured. After the talk, a line of people formed to speak with me. Many shared their own experiences or those of loved ones. Others simply wanted to offer support. That night, as I lay in bed reflecting on the day, I felt a profound sense of purpose. My past, painful as it was, had become a tool for change. The speaking engagements continued, taking me across the country. I spoke at universities, women's shelters, and even a TEDx event. Each time, I drew strength from the audience, from the knowledge that my words might be the lifeline someone needed. I also began writing a book on my experiences during this time. It was a difficult process that made me relive some of my worst experiences, but it was also healing and gave me a fresh perspective on how to deal with my trauma. My book's publication day was an odd day. I felt a mixture of pride and fear when I saw my name on the cover and my tale exposed for the entire world to read. I was shocked to find that individuals connected with the book. It quickly shot to the top of bestseller lists, and I was conducting interviews on national television. I paused when the host asked me a question during one of these interviews. "Tiffany, after everything you've been through, do you have any regrets?" I paused to consider my response. I don't regret my journey, but I do regret the years I lost to abuse and fear. I am now able to assist others in discovering their strength because of every step and every challenge I have faced. Thus, no, I wouldn't make any changes. My story was far from over. I discovered as I worked on. Every day presented fresh obstacles and chances to develop and assist others. The terrified, quiet lady I had formerly been had evolved into a voice for the voiceless and a ray of hope for those who remained in the shadows from which I had come.